Hello, everybody. I'm Brad Bogus here with Happy Cabbage. We've got Andrew Watson, CEO of Happy Cabbage, and Nick Hatfield, a purchasing administrator with Pure Options in Michigan. And we've got a really great conversation set up for you guys today on our Buyer's Blueprint series. For those who don't know who we are and what we do, let me give you just a real quick rundown. I'm going to share my screen, if you don't mind. Here we go. Slideshow. Bam. Okay, so this is our buyer's blueprint series. We've done, I think, three of these now. This might be our fourth. And really, the whole point of these discussions is to get down into the nitty gritty of the role of the buyer at a retail cannabis location, and to talk about the different solutions and problems that buyers have to overcome to do their job. Just a conversation we don't find is happening anywhere else. If you don't know who we are and this is your first time, hi, we're Happy Cabbage. We make retail cannabis ordering easy. Basically, we have integrated with some of the major POS systems out there. I'll show you the integrations here in a second so that we can crunch the data for you and provide you meaningful, actionable insights throughout the buyer's role and throughout the process, helping you to reorder, know what to stock, when to stock it, how much to stock of what brands, what SKUs, what groups of SKUs. There's so many different ways to dice up your data, and we do it for you every single hour so that you don't have to crunch more numbers in spreadsheets. We are also, we have built Happy Buyers, which is the only inventory tool specifically built for retail cannabis buyers. And so, like, we literally live and breathe the buyer's role every single day. We talk to buyers across the country, anywhere from single locations to managing 14 plus locations across multiple states. The role is infinitely complicated the bigger you get, but even for individual locations, they're still struggling with basic overstocking problems, over ordering problems, and we're able to take that guesswork out of it. People who work on Happy Buyers, we found on average are saving $150,000 in cash flow that was previously locked up on their shelves because of overstocked inventory over 3 months. And we find that the average buyer is saving around 10 hours a week just by using our tool instead of crunching numbers in a spreadsheet. So we're talking about real ROI, very direct results from people who are able to make the insights happen instantly through our platform. A couple other things that Happy Buyers has been able to do, it reduces the days of supply on hand by 40%, down 17 days. Our average buyer, we found, generally has 57 days of supply on hand. So this is meaningful, makes a big impact. That's where those numbers are coming from. 11% reduction in total SKUs by making smarter decisions, and a 14% reduction in slow moving SKUs. So we're trying to get that aging inventory off your shelf as well. Here's a number of the customers we've worked with. You see we work with some of the biggest ones in the nation. We've also got Pure Options up here, which is where Nick is from. So if you ever want to hear from any of these customers, they're happy to share the results that they've experienced. They really love Happy Buyers and refer us business all the time because they really believe in the tool. We're integrated in your favorite POS systems. Most of the big ones here, right? We just integrated with with FlowHub and announced that integration about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So that's relatively new information. But yeah, we're tackling the biggest problems in cannabis. This is where most people are working. And if you want to try Happy Buyers for yourself, we give you 14 days free to do it. Complete live data across all your stores, as many users as you need. This is an actual real 14-day free trial where you're able to save money using our tool. And if you don't like it at the end, no problem. We can just shake hands and walk away and say, we gave it a good college try. But, we've seen about 70% of the people who jump into our trial end up becoming customers because the product is just that good. We believe in it. We're going to give it to you for free. So go ahead and give us a shot. If you don't like us, all good. We'll be friends. In the meantime, we're going to talk with one of our Happy Buyers. This is Nick from Pure Options. I'm going to kick it off to Andrew and Nick to have that conversation. During the conversation, if you have any questions, you can hit us up in the QA. There's a little Q&A button with a question mark down in your Zoom toolbox. Click on that and ask any questions you like. But if it's easier for you, go ahead and throw them in chat too. We don't mind an interactive discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it off to Andrew and Nick.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Thanks for a great introduction. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hello, hello.
So to first kick it off, would love to just like give a quick, what's your role? Tell me about a little bit like who you are, where you are, what you cover, and just a little bit about Pure Options. Like how many stores is it? Like, yeah, just kick us off there.
So right now we're at 6 locations and growing. We're building more in a couple other cities. We're spread around Michigan, mainly in Lansing is our headquarters. So we have 4 locations there. Our CI warehouse is there, our central inventory, and then we're expanding to more inventory space as well. And right now I'm the purchasing admin, so I just oversee all the third-party products that we order in on our shelves and get those orders done. Uh, the prices negotiated, and then I also work with the credits and sales data. So I also get all the credits done for anything aging, any discounts and promos we do. And yeah,
Oh, awesome, awesome. So that's a lot of work.
oh yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your background. How did you get into this role at Pure Options? What were you doing beforehand? Is this your first role in purchasing? Just a little bit about that.
So the before I came into this role, I was just a general manager over at Pure Options, and then I became a little bit of a district manager overseeing some of their other stores, and then easing my way into the purchasing and accounts payable part as well. The with purchasing, a little bit of my background before, I used to work for World Class Distribution, who Trader Joe's works through. Other than that, I just kind of learned a little bit about more of the actual role, how it rolls out on the cannabis side as I came into here. And you already just with vendor contact as the district manager, kind of helped give me some insight on how this is going, and then just kind of picked it up from there.
That's actually a really good tee up. So one thing we talk to is and see is a lot of buyers have some previous distribution background outside of cannabis and or general manager experience like within cannabis coming up into the role. First question I have for you there, and I think it's just insightful for a lot of folks, going from outside cannabis, touching that a little bit to touching it in cannabis, what do you think is like the biggest difference that a lot of folks don't realize?
Um, Definitely just so business relations seem to be a little bit more different on the cannabis side than anywhere else. So like you definitely want to get with certain vendors, get a certain relationship down and kind of customize your profits or like in general that you might be making through your store to kind of keep them moving on your shelves or keep people attracted to them. So really just the individual relationships with the different brands, since there could be so many brands under one umbrella in the cannabis industry. Like our yield distribution up here has, I think, 13 other cannabis companies beneath it that we can order through. So just kind of tightening that down is probably the biggest difficulty and
Got it.
difference.
And then going from the general manager role into your current role, what was like in your mind the biggest thing that like either you weren't expecting or is like for people who are currently general managers who are looking to go into a buyer role, like what is like the biggest difference that you've experienced?
Um, so it's definitely just a different take on how like you're so from managing people in inventory to kind of just overseeing nothing but data inventory than communicating with certain vendors. But like, it's definitely very different in that aspect. But for managing your inventory, as long as you're pretty on top of it, and you, as a general manager, like to try to control your store a little bit and communicate with your own company and purchasing team on try to moving your inventory, it gave me a little bit more of an insight of when I stepped into it overall to see how it moves a lot differently on the back end on getting these things to move through. But really, just the thing I was shocked to see was how like we didn't have a happy buyers or anything yet. So just seeing kind of the organization of how it is just kind of buying almost everything they have available on their menu for some of these places instead of strategically buying what might move on your shelf and things like that. That was probably the biggest difference is seeing how purchasing gets done. Over purchasing is definitely common in the state and in
Yeah.
this industry.
What do you think drives that? That's a thing we hear all the time. Why do you
Uh,
think organizations do that?
I honestly, I think it's a little bit of miscommunication. Sometimes I think it's just, hey, we want to work with you, send us what you got, and it's not really kind of controlling again, like to start from the beginning with how your sales data should look, kind of control what you're bringing in at first to get more data, bring in a little bit more later. I think it's a lot of like just full steam ahead right from the gate instead of slowly taking in new products. And I think it just kind of gets a little out of control because there's only so many. Cannabis industry is huge, but still there's only so much people in your cities, and if you're just kind of taking a full menu from everybody, and there's like over 50 companies that are willing to sell you things that don't have a storefront themselves, like it gets out of hand pretty quickly. So I think it's just the personal relations, and then just kind of taking on the menu, not realizing that they probably have a full catalog of products.
So so talk to me a little bit. So since you manage a ton of third-party vendors for a ton of locations, and as you mentioned, a lot of it comes down to relationships. When you're starting to evaluate a third-party brand, and I think you have a really good perspective on this to what you were saying on like being a little bit more discerning. Normally, what's the process that you go through?
So I like to look at, just try to see like through, I believe there's it's called Pistol and Headset. Some other things I can look at to kind of see what's moving through our state in general, what brands, and then I can look up to see kind of what our local competitors are pricing it at, and then I'll go a little bit off of there. What's reasonably priced for our demographic we have at our stores, because certain stores definitely have like certain items where they'll be big spenders, other items where it's low spenders, and just really kind of tightening that down, and then I'll order us off of popular things from their brand through the state. I'll order those popular things first, other things I think might do well, and then only do a limited stock, kind of see how that data drives, see how quickly they move, what discounts may go on them as they move, and then just kind of go on from there, brand by brand.
Got it. And then how often, actually, I've never asked this question, I just realized, but how often do you find that a new third-party brand coming into your shelves performs at the level of expectations that you had versus underperforms versus overperforms?
I would say a lot more, just because of, again, how some places will have umbrellas underneath them. And there's definitely a lot more brands in general that will, even though they work with another vendor we have that doesn't move very well, they might have this other vendor where their stuff moves great. And just trying to, like even just this month, I think we had 3 new vendors come in, and we already had a bunch. So it's surprising on like the new companies that'll come and go, and other ones that'll be bought out by others to kind of keep them rolling. So there is a lot of different vendors that I expected, and we probably get a few good new ones a month actually.
Okay, yeah. So it is the type of thing where like you do feel like you really need to be staying on top of it all the time in order to
staying on top of it, dropping some off. Yeah.
Got it. And then Pure Options also has a house brand, correct?
Yes, we have 2. We have our Pure Options, our Pro Grow, and our BAM.
Got it.
That we all produce from our different grows.
In your role with your evaluation of third-party brands, how are you thinking of, or like what's your mandate around balancing that with the house brand? And this is what a lot of folks who are scaling up their house brands right now are kind of dealing with, right? How do you manage that right now within Pure Options to make sure that you're not overstocking at the end of the day?
That one is a little bit difficult. I think, thank goodness, I do have a CI team to kind of help me with that, of keeping me up to date on the direct stock of certain things in per location. So again, some places will be busier than others, so some we definitely have to dial back. Some things that even if they don't sell that well, have to dial back, like maybe a particular category like edibles, pre-rolls, or something, to get our own house brand in there a little bit more. But again, we still got to keep track of the stock and how it's moving. But we do, the biggest thing is just making sure each location isn't overstocked, and we do try to prioritize our house first. But really it just kind of goes off of the fluctuation of people you have coming into your store and the amount of products you're going to be carrying.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think to that point, like just what you were saying in terms of if you're always staying on top of it and you're never kind of just like willy-nilly stocking the whole menu from the third party while also trying to push all the house brand, you're not going to run into like as much the issue that a lot of folks have run into that we're seeing with the overstocking problem.
It's definitely a lot of communication with the vendor. Some of them, they want to keep pushing you more and more, but it's like you kind of just have to pump the brakes on some of them because of your house brand.
Yeah. What do you when you're talking to that third party and they are coming at you to try to push it more, what pieces of information do you normally leverage the most to like push back on them or hold them back, or like do you just like ignore it and just run off the data that you see on your side?
Yeah, sometimes you have to ignore a couple, but you don't, not intentionally. Again, there is kind of a lot of them coming at you, and then eventually they just kind of fizzle out. But no, a lot of it really is the data. All credits guy as well. It'll really crunch down to what product we might have destroyed out due to expiration. Anything that like is showing up, if they show up constantly with like damaged product, and we constantly have to reach out to these vendors when a first package comes in. And just really things like that. What discounts did we have to put on it to get it to move, and at what time? Like how long was it sitting there before a discount got applied? What might have been destroyed due to expiration? And I'll kind of feed them all that data and be like, we're buying for you at this price, but we only move it when we sell it at this price. So we'll have to, I just give them that data, and usually they try to work something else out with us, or we'll just kind of drop that category from that brand altogether.
Yeah, no, that makes a whole lot of sense. And to that point, how much time? I mean, that's a lot of data that you're looking at. What percent of your time would you say is like crunching that data for the conversations versus having the conversations?
It's quite a bit. I would say that honestly is a little bit of most of my time. And that Happy Buyers honestly has been like a huge lifesaver of the things that are moving with an immediate quick. This is what you're low on. This is what moved. This is the profit you made off of it, for me to go off of there. So that has honestly saved me a lot of time when forming an order. But still, when compiling that data just to kind of either get credits back or renegotiate terms with them, I honestly can't even say how much time I spend on that, but it's a lot. I haven't double tracked it myself. Yeah, I don't want to drive myself too insane.
Would you say though that your ability to get those margins, and this is a little bit of a layup, right? But your ability to like talk to them to guarantee those margins is probably the most impactful thing that you're doing every day.
100%, 100%. Because again, a lot of it comes to relations. So some of them, it's like we buy your wholesale. So some of them might be reciprocal vendors. Like you're buying from us a certain amount for us to buy from you, but we still have to be reasonable. We're doing it. So again, a lot of it is just coming down to taking the time to communicate, and not, again, not having the products on your shelf, or only a limited amount of it, until those communications go through. Because that's what's going to push them to want to close the sale more too, is giving them a little bit of data, kind of delaying some of their products, and then usually they're willing to work with you a little more.
Got it.
But yeah, I could say that's a big profit difference right there.
Yeah, got it. And actually, to that point on the reciprocal, how do you deal with situations where the reciprocity is pushing for a larger volume of purchase than necessarily like what you think in the data is actually going to move?
So again, I have a wholesale team that helps me a little bit more with that. I really just kind of fall back on them to see what exactly these vendors may be getting from us to kind of go from there. But other than that, it's just kind of the data. It's like we're only, data's data, unfortunately. Like if you're buying so much from us, but it's you're making a certain profit and it moves very easily for you, it doesn't mean I need to take on the same from your brand. I will take on the things that do move. So it's like, again, finding that middle ground, but still trying to help each other out.
I think it's a really good thing to point out the fact that like they all have menus, right? And so because they all have menus, oftentimes there's stuff on the menu that does move. It's just a matter of like being like upfront with them about what is the things that are actually moving versus not moving. Oftentimes it sounds like
100%.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, cool. I want to talk a little bit then about, because this is other stuff that I think a lot of organizations that are scaling up that are dealing with as well, is just a little bit about your centralized distribution model across all the various stores. So from what I understand, when you're doing these orders, are you bringing them into a central location and then distributing them out to the stores? Are the orders going direct to the stores? How's the house brand mixed in? Like just give us a quick high level of how Pure Options handles that hub and spoke model.
So all of our house, we definitely try to prioritize going to our central location first and then being dispersed from there. We will have certain stores where we'll do direct on if it's a major need on a certain product. We'll do it directly. But for the most part, for the third party ones, I do some directs, but they're trying to get it mainly to our CI warehouse, and then we can hold on to our stocks there and then distribute exactly how we want. But we do have a flagship store where it's bigger than the others. in a busier area of a city than the other. So I do a lot of directs to that one to keep their stock where it needs to be. And everybody else is able to just kind of feed out of our central warehouse.
Got it. And when you are doing those orders, right, for the direct versus the central, are you negotiating terms like margin terms, credit terms, and stuff like that across the entire store portfolio so you can guarantee that? Or are you sometimes dealing with like the order coming in direct to the flagship location versus the distribution? You might be dealing with different terms on those orders.
I try to do a blanket term for all of them, but then when it comes to the credit side, and getting things discounted, finding the things that aren't moving on our shelves to getting them to move, then it'll be store by store with those vendors kind of negotiations. Sometimes they don't want to push out a product from one store that they do at another for some reason. So at that time is when I'm putting the orders in, it's all one blanket term. And then after that, when trying to move things that aren't moving, it'll be individual per location.
Got it. And when
deals with those vendors.
And when you're thinking about terms, how are you structuring normally those credit terms as well, given the fact that that's the thing that it seems to be like maybe fluctuating across the various stores and stuff?
So just mainly off the data. Each place has like different things going on, so I can go off of previous data, even if we haven't carried them in like 6 months or so. I can kind of pull up things from the past and try to set restrictions from the get-go on what it is, like draft approvals, discount credit approvals, and all that before it even gets sent to us, so we can start selling right away.
Yeah, got it. So it's like structure, process, essentially what you're getting, right?
Yeah,
and trying to. And I can add, so to that point, a lot of folks, given how complex the task that you're talking about is, and given how time consuming it can be to gather all this data in absence of certain tools, have what you are describing happening every single store, store by store by store, individuals going direct to vendors at a given store versus getting that centralized terms. In your mind, what are the benefits from the centralized model versus what would you say to someone who's dealing with like they're doing it store by store by store versus actually doing it centralized?
Like you said, without having certain tools, like those demand groups and Happy Buyers again has definitely made a difference with keeping us a heads up. But having the centralized inventory, it's easier to track the one station of inventory to see what is depleting, to know how to start to replenish it, and then you can look at the data on how to replenish it versus how it was being done at stores. But it's much easier to keep track of a product running low in this one location than versus the 6. And once it's getting low here, I know it's starting to get low at some other places, but they're not out yet. And then before I do my reorder, I'll see the sales data at each location, and then still re-trigger a shipment to the CI warehouse. But I feel like it was a little difficult if you're tracking all locations, inventory by inventory, just seeing what's getting low. Because again, some stores sell through much faster than those other brands, so it's easier having it all in one location. Once it starts to deplete in this one location, I know we're about to run out somewhere else.
Got it. No, that makes a whole lot of sense. And then what flexibility do you ultimately end up giving the stores individually? Like where does your decision making / like what you've decided end, and like what, if any, flexibility do the stores have when actually intaking and dealing with the brand once it's on the shelves?
They get to view what we have here in CI, so they can have a little bit of a pool of what they want or what they don't want. I still might send something that they didn't have on there that I noticed that they're low on, or does sell well at their locations didn't ask for, or might take something off. But really, it's just all about all the data. Like I hate to keep saying that, but it really is all about the data. How many customers each month are you having come in or not come in? What's moving, what deal was on it for you to get it to move, because we have blanket deals across all of our stores as well. But again, the general managers, off of things that are aging or things that they know, they still have an ability to add little discounts themselves within a limit. So really seeing, again, yeah, you might be selling it, but you're not selling it with the same profits as this other store. So you might only get a limited stock of it, if any at all.
How would you say, when you're talking about you go from a general manager to the more centralized purchasing role, how would you say your perspective on that has changed, if at all? Right. So oftentimes what we hear is like, GMs at specific stores oftentimes like what they're looking at is just like what they see on the
Very
store
good. Yeah.
level. Yeah.
Well, I was lucky enough to get bounced around a little bit at this time. Like, I was able to oversee a couple different stores at Sienna that I was able to see a couple at once without being the direct general manager. But it really is. I feel like that's what helped me a lot actually, with the fact that I was able to work ahead of sales at these locations and then go into it, because our purchaser before was just an admin purchaser, and they're just kind of only going off of so much data, but then they're just kind of talking with these vendors, feeding in what they as well, but they hadn't been there day to day with the customers, listening to them talk with the bud tenders, actually kind of seeing what control and like inventory movement in their stores. So I feel like that was a big help to me being a manager at a couple of stores here before going into the purchasing world, to really understand what people are asking for and how it starts to move.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point. Like, as people may or may not be moving to a centralized management, actually making sure you're still getting into the store and getting the feedback direct from the stored stuff, or you're going to be missing things, essentially, is what you're kind of calling out. Yeah. Cool. Talk to me a bit, because there's a lot of questions, and I know in previous conversations, a little bit, you mentioned a little bit margins, right? In general, how are you thinking about what margins you're trying to target with vendors? Do you have a minimum margin that you need to be setting? Do you go vendor by vendor for different target margins? Like, how do you normally
Some of
think
them it might be different just on relations. Like we'll be able to, sell this a little bit cheaper, but we still have to pay the full cost for some reason. But we'll allow with relations of whoever's in the company to happen. But pretty much try for like a 50% profit margin right out the gate, because then with all the different discounts we do, we don't try to worry about it too much. So anywhere from like 30 to 50, but if it's 30, we should have had discounts on it.
Got it. And then oftentimes what we hear is the main lever vendors will say back to you when you're like, I need that 50%. And they're like, okay, I can give you for 50% or something like that if you buy
this month. Yeah.
That's much
we
stuff.
Definitely have negotiations like that as well. That's actually a good point. I forgot to mention that. So there are some things where we are able to get it cheaper, because instead of it having it already kind of cased down to the smaller things, we're buying it in big bulk, just in one big box, and then we'll have our central inventory team here split them into the cases and stuff like that. So that some of the terms do come down to that. It's like, do you want it sent in cases of 25, 50, or 100, or do you just want like 500 or 800 sent to you, and then you guys can split them up? And we are usually able to get the cost cheaper if we just kind of buy them in bulk and split tags ourselves.
How do you make sure that you're not overbuying with instances like that? I think you get the benefit of having the central distro, and so you have 6 stores to sort of spread that around with. But how do you like evaluate times where the data says you're just not going to turn over a certain size to buy within 90 days or whatever it is? Yeah. How do you reconcile those two normally? Which one are you normally prioritizing?
So usually it's definitely, I pay attention to the quantity amount no matter what, not really the case amount. But if it's something to where I feel like I have to buy a lot of it and it's only going to move so much, I'll try to see right off the bat, hey, with these dates and these dates, do you want to do a deal with this and this, so we can split, the credit this way, yada, yada. So just try to come, again, just a lot of vendor negotiation.
Yeah, got it. So you normally are moving them off of the bulk buy discount if you know it's not going to actually move.
Yeah, and then and if we're gonna close it, it's like, hey, let's try to set a deal between these dates or something, because we know we're not going to move it off.
Got it. That makes a whole lot of sense, and I do think it calls out the fact that like you have more than one lever than what the vendors are necessarily giving you. Right. And I think it goes from like what you're kind of describing is a little bit of like active purchasing, right? Where you're actively like, you have your process, you have your structure. The vendors ultimately have to fit into that process and structure, right? Versus passive, which is they say, here's the menu. If you want to get the margin, you need to buy this amount. And then people are just buying that amount to get the margin across the whole menu, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And Michigan is very so. I mean, I've worked in the cannabis market in Florida as well, but like I can say Michigan definitely has a slight advantage when negotiating with a lot of their vendors because of how the market moves out here. It very much is like some companies trying to undersell the other. So again, it's like we see a lot of people through our dispensaries. We usually don't have to get costs too low. So it's like, if you want your product to continue to move and still make a decent margin, like you'll work with us because there's other dispensaries definitely hitting up trying to get it lower because the tactic in Michigan is to just see what your neighbor's selling it as and cut it $1 or two under. And it's definitely not beneficial for all of us, but it at least makes it easier to deal with these vendors. So when you have a well-moving business.
Would you say, and this is just like a interesting take on markets, would you say as a result that the Michigan market is better for retail than what you experience in Florida?
Yes and no. So again, I kind of like almost like I don't, it's a bloodthirsty market. I don't know. I guess I
Yeah.
could leave my opinion. Because I mean, again, even like alcohol, they have like state limits and stuff of like how low to go for certain brands. To where like it's if you're just in a
Yeah,
state where all
there
of
are
us try to undersell
rules.
each other, you're eventually going to race it down to the bottom. Yeah, like everything's just pretty cheap. But
Yeah, yeah. I always say Michigan always fascinates me. My wife's family's from Toledo, Ohio, and so I fly into Detroit often and do the drive from Detroit to Toledo. And I always remember you cross over the border into Michigan on the interstate, and it's just
nothing but billboard.
billboard after
Yeah,
billboard after billboard, and it's all brands, retailers, right? Like all this kind of stuff. Like it's pretty wild. But in my mind, like that's capitalism for
yeah. I think that's what I'd say. Yeah, plus,
right? Like like that's ultimately where the vast majority of markets will eventually end up, unless we go the way
100%.
of Bev Alc, where they may set minimums, but I don't know if that's coming anytime soon. No,
Honestly, I
yeah.
hope not. But also, yeah, again, very conflicted. It's a bloodthirsty market. That's all I
It's a
gotta
bloodthirsty market, yeah. But it seems like if you're a retailer who's on top of it, you can play that oftentimes to your advantage on margin, right? You know what
100%.
I mean? You can get to a place where you're producing the cash flow because you have the margin to guarantee that that shop is going to survive or the shops are going to survive, right? And that's the thing, right? Like a lot of folks aren't even like managing to cash flow positive for their shops,
Yeah.
which is
At
a
the end of the
whole
day, we
thing.
all need each other. You know what I mean? We have the customers to sell the product. You don't have the source front. You just have the product to push out. But at the end of the day, we need each other. This is finding that
Yeah,
common ground.
yeah. Last kind of subject I want to get into is talk to me about, you know, through your process, how much are you looking at store specific, like menu planning, different things? Are you ever stocking third party brands specifically for a store set of stores, not across your overall portfolio, specific to demographics or sub regional effects, versus trying to unify menus across all stores, right?
Yeah.
And for simplicity, right? Like how do you balance those two things?
So it is a lot of work again. It's just really crunching the numbers, making sure you're paying attention to the right ones, not, and I'll order specific things and I'll send a breakdown to our CI team to the warehouse as well. So if I'm ordering from the vendor with a specific thing of like, ordering so many cases of this and it's not enough to be spread out, I'm sending them a breakdown of why I'm not buying enough for it to be spread out because we want it to go to this location. And then that's just off of either request and sales data of how it's actually demographics doing in that area. But yeah, we will order extra things to send to the warehouse and then we'll send a breakdown to our CI team to make sure they know the plans
Got it.
for some of those. Not very detailed, but at least those these low cases may be going here, or keep these ones aside. You'll get another breakdown later, anything like that. So yeah, we do. I don't just do a blanket for the menu. It'll be per location, and then it'll still get sent to CI, and then we'll have a breakdown.
I was just asking Nick about, sort of community level demand and understanding like store
Yeah.
specificities down to that level. So I'll let you guys take it up from here.
That was actually my next question, right? Like when the stores are clamoring for, we need to be stocking this brand because everyone's asking for it. Like, how are you dealing with those conversations, basically?
I'll definitely. I mean, if they feel like they have that much of a demand of it from their customers coming in, we'll definitely try it out. It'll just be again like a limited stock at first. I might even just do it direct to there into our flagship store before even making a CI overhaul, and it's only being sold at 2, 3 locations. And if it does well, we're gonna, again, limit what we're getting from them, but at least a bigger stock, and then we can spread it out to our other stores, and then slowly start to find what products of theirs moves well on our shelf without having to do a massive overhaul at first. And again, Happy Buyers, very helpful when it has the breakdown of all stores per store, just for like quick
Yeah.
quick data flips when going through all this.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. The idea was to make it very fast in one place to be able to
Very
look at all of
beneficial,
it. Yeah.
especially with exporting. It's a whole different ball game on this thing.
Oh yeah. That we realize at the end of the day, although we've replaced a lot of Excel, spreadsheets are the name of the game. So you have to give people access to the data that's at the level that like is useful to them. That's the whole point. Type of thinking. Last quarter of question before we kind of just kick it off into a little bit of a Q&A realm. How do you size the buys? This is like a little specific thing. Not a lot of people know the process. When you're first starting off, stores saying they should stock a brand, new vendor. You're looking at like the market data out of sources like you're mentioning. That first buy, how do you pick the quantity?
I would. It's a little bit of, especially for our stores, if I can go off of each month is a different way of like how much people are we expecting to come into our stores versus how much have been coming in recently, and at those stores, at each location, what kind of like if I'm buying new eights, how well do prepackaged eights move and on what price shelf? You know what I mean? And that helps me know what price shelf I'm looking at now and how much is probably going to move there. And I'll kind of go off that quantity because they're pretty. If we're newly messing with them, they're pretty responsive on this is moving better than we thought. We want a bigger order, and they're usually quick to jump to it.
Yeah, yeah. So oftentimes you're pegging it to your existing data.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll always expand from there because there are some things. Again, we'll try more. Like we're not afraid when we see a vendor doing well to try more, and then still try to keep track of how long things have been sitting on the shelf, and then try to get a discount worked out with them. To credit or a credit worked out with them to discount off our shelf.
Yeah.
So like
And so,
we don't like supremely limit everybody. We're not afraid to experiment, but we're just definitely very on top of it.
yeah, 100%. And then like to that point, you have pre-negotiated the mechanisms or rules around the credits and the discounts so that you're also coming in with that tool out the gate in case it's not moving at that speed, or if like the reality is you have to be discounting on a new brand to get it to move in because of the market,
Yes.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then with that, right? How many days are you normally targeting for that first buy to turn over within?
Anywhere from like the 2 weeks to like 35 days.
2 weeks to 35 days, depending. Why 2 weeks sometimes and why 35 days sometimes?
Really it's just off of like if we have a bunch of if pre-packed eights, like I might go for a lower stock and then buy more of their pre-rolls per se, or like their vapes or something like that. Really, it's just that because some of our stores, like they really are limited just by the location where they're at and like the amount of customers they have coming in. Like some, it is a very big difference on the amount of customer flow from one store to another.
Yeah. And the ones that have slower flow, do you normally
They get
target more days for them?
no, they'll usually get like the 2, 3 weeks, but sometimes like it might sit there a little longer anyways if it didn't do that well. And if it did great, and then I can trigger an actual CI shipment.
Got it. And so it's the other way. So basically, the slow moving stores, you're more conservative on how much you're putting in to turn it over. Got it.
Yeah, and those bigger ones, I'm like, even if somebody didn't have an interest in it, it has more of a chance of moving because there's more of a customer base there.
Got it. So you're more comfortable with like the 30-day buy, essentially, for those types of things. Yeah. What would you say to folks who are like, well, I just don't want to be dealing with purchasing all the time, so I'm just going to go in for a 60-day or 90-day buy?
No, that's good. I mean, there's certain brands that we're going to start doing that as well too. If it doesn't age out, in a certain late time, and it's a top one of your top brands, like we're not afraid to take that much in because we know it's going to move and we know it has a decent shelf life on it. And like just because it lasts so long, again, we want to make sure it still is a good product. So we'll just kind of go off age too. We'll allow more things to go on.
Yeah, but it's for the legacy ones that
Yeah,
I'm gonna get a solid run rate on this, and
yeah,
I've already have a relationship with that vendor, so I know my margin expectations and all that kind of
100%.
stuff. Yeah,
And there's also, I don't know if LeafLink is something in other states. We didn't have it in
yeah,
Florida. We have it here in Michigan. LeafLink, they have a post payment agreement as well, which sometimes we'll do that too. We'll take on more of your products if you're willing to do a pay as it sells agreement
type of
versus a
stuff.
pay up front. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
no,
then
that's
again, if it's not selling, it's easier to negotiate the terms with them. If it's already
yeah,
on your shelf and you haven't paid for it yet. Yeah.
that's a huge evolving thing I think in the industry right now. Is just like more creative
Assignments.
payment terms,
Yeah.
consignments, pay as it sells types of things. Because there's a lot of times this narrative of like, well, the retail is not paying back the brand, but at the same time, like that brand really pushed to get that inventory into that store, right? And if they get it wrong, it really is a mutual thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the retail can't pay the brand back for, and then unfortunately, then you get all the news of all the closing shops and the shutting down brands and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of it has to do with like, you ultimately can only stock the amount that someone's going to buy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, cool. We're going to open it up now. Some Q&A questions from the audience
Do it.
for the last few minutes. And then send us on our merry way. But I just want to say, Nick, huge, thankful wealth of information. I know to you, it's probably just what you do every day, but
Yeah. That's part of
there's
my job. That's just part of my job.
Well,
Again, we're
it's
slowly
one
getting
of the many
structured.
hats you wear.
Yeah. Um, yeah, let's open up some Q&A. What do we got?
Yeah.
For
So we've got 4 questions submitted so far. If we still have time and you still have questions, feel free to throw us some more. We can see if we get to them or not. I'm going to tackle this one just because it came in like really right at the start of the webinar. So they've been waiting for this answer for a bit. Although admittedly it's selfish to us. Does Happy Buyers offer a way to track sales of a product at different price points throughout the product's life? Example, if a product was discounted and then sold a lot more, is there a way to see that within Happy Buyers data, or would you have to do manual digging?
So within the Happy Buyers data, you can pick different look back periods as well as different time periods. So you know that, and we report back the discount dollars and margin. So you can basically look at that slice of time period and then look at the run rate. So you can know, hey, I was running at this. That's the kind of run rate I got versus when I was running it at this. This is the kind of run rate I got. You can slice and dice it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This one is for you, Nick. How do you discover new products if you stick with relationships you know and have, or rather, how does a new brand get in?
The send us samples, and we're usually gonna order from you and give you a shot there. Because again, it's always a revolving door. So even with the ones we have relations with, again, data is data. So we'll still limit how much we do from them, but still have our reciprocals that we need. But new brands, there's always room for new brands because of the amount of customers we have coming through. That's why we're really tight on the product. So they usually send samples, which helps. We'll send to the bud tenders, get some feedback, and then we'll put in a purchase, try them on our shelves, and then again, slowly order new things, slowly drop off other things. So we'll really start to see what sells well from that new vendor in our store, so we'll be able to keep ordering from them.
Right on. All right. So this is another question for Nick, although it won't sound like it's a question for Nick. So bear with me. This is an interesting one. We are currently testing Happy Buyers. We struggle with using it as best as we can for flower. How are you using it for constantly changing strains from growers? It's not a set and forget like a gummy, which they produce the same thing of all the time.
That is very true. Yeah, yeah. No, that's yeah. Yeah, no, again, that's just going off. So if you know that brand sells well, but they don't have those particular strains in, again, that's where we'll limit how much we're buying, but still try to hit close to that month period and try a couple more new strains. And it'll usually still sell well if that brand has a nice reputation.
Yeah.
Especially with the flower. Flower is our best movement.
That's also where, Nick, I know you're mentioning the demand groups. That's where some of the demand group stuff can help because you can save those searches for that group of flower strains, essentially, with the demand group feature, and you can track them as a group and get notifications for them as a group as opposed to product by product. That is possible there. Yeah.
What is like a good example of a demand group for different types of flower that would help solve for this problem?
I mean, to the point on brand matters. So just grabbing brand and then unit weight, like, if you want to just track, I don't know, man, my Michigan flower brands, I'm blanking on the spot. But, like Flower of Life or something like that, right? If you want to track that 8 and just look at those, that's a good tracking because then you can get the notifications of that as a group of products as well and look at it as a group. So you don't have to constantly be going down into the filter set and looking product by product, which the demand group math, it actually under the hood, I don't know, Nick, if you even do this, under the hood, when you set a demand group, it actually does make the math more accurate on that overall product set because by telling it that this is a similar set or safe search of products, it'll actually look at if those products are substitutable with each other. It can actually give you a better run rate at that group. Yeah.
Right on. All right, Nick, got another one for you. Does headset work for wholesale teams? As in, can wholesale teams see how they are doing across the state or with certain retailers they work with?
That headset, I believe so, yes. Let me pull up my headset again. I believe that. And then pistol data is one where it'll show you like units being sold. But yeah, our headset, I believe I'm able to see how all of that was moving for us.
Right on.
Oh man, where is
cool.
my headset?
Pulling up now.
Here's another question for you, Nick. Do you want a world where brand vendors can see your current inventory levels so that they can approach you with reordering when you need it rather than always bothering you if you don't?
Yes. So the companies that are, not all of them, but some of the companies that are on our, there it is, that's it. Some of the companies that are on our consignment, like our post payment, we will send them the data so they know that, especially if LeafLink doesn't track it correctly, we still send them the data of what's selling, and they kind of help. They're able to see the inventory fluctuation on the level, and they'll all sometimes send a draft order and customize it, or it'll just send you the menu and be like, "Hey, I see you're low, put an order in." But sometimes they will actually send us a draft for us to approve it, and then they'll send it for us to send to our locations. But the only ones that do that are the ones that are on some type of post payment.
That's actually, since we're hearing that a lot more, particularly for the brands you have good relationships with and you're getting into that kind of stuff with, we do have on-demand groups you can drop in emails, right, for brands specifically, so brands can be auto-notified of those demand groups. But we're actually in the process of rolling out a whole new brand widget so that it can actually send the order directly out of Happy Buyers to the brand directly and let the brand monitor whatever set of products you allow them to monitor in a dedicated brand page. So that's something we're also working on.
Did the internet just go out? Do you have internet? You have internet?
Nick, we can still hear you.
We still see and hear you.
I know. I'm on my phone though, so that's why. But everything on my computer just went out.
Internet.
That's so funny.
The internet today has decided it doesn't want to work nationally.
Right? Thankfully, the wave hasn't made it to Denver yet, but hitting him in Michigan, it must have passed me somehow.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Any other Q&A sitting in there?
No, those are all the questions that we have had submitted so far. So
Okay.
we can go ahead and wrap this thing up real quick. Just give me 1 second to
Quick question also.
yeah.
I know I asked this before. So getting the case counts in there, is that only when you create a demand group, or is there another way to kind of punch those in too for some brands and items, for it to kind of have that data in there? Or is it just when you create the demand group is when you can have like case updates in there?
Here. Actually, let me share my screen real quickly. I'll show you live. So you can do it.
Live demo.
So,
I love
yeah,
this.
impromptu live demo, everybody. So this is just like a example organization. Let me just clear that filter, right? So what you can do, there are two ways to that point. There are two ways to do it. So what you can do is you can grab, let me just like grab pre-roll Jeter, this example data. You can go into specific products, and if you click on view, right, you can actually add the case size directly here on an individual product basis. So if you go down here and you click edit, you can change both the category and the overall case size directly on the product. But if you're trying to do a bulk product update, the best way to do that is add it to a demand group. So if I created a demand group of like Jeter pre-rolls, and then I set this case size here, that will batch update it. If you don't want to necessarily be dealing with that demand group all the time, then all you got to do is you can just go back in here and you can archive the demand group so you're not getting the notifications off of it. And you can also in here go to demand group settings for any given demand group. And you can also set batch updates on both case size and category overall.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And then you always have available to you on your custom columns, you can always be able to pull in units needed and units to order and case size here. So if I pull that in here, you can see overall case sizes, as well as, you know, this is your exact amount of units needed based on your days of on hand and look back in your run rates. And then your units to order is going to be that in the multiple of case sizes. And one last thing I'll say is you also have, if you create a purchase request all off of any given group of products. So give me 1 second here. So if I go into here, I think I've made a purchase request of a huge amount of products. I believe you have the ability to add in the actual units to order here, and you can punch in and modify this, which will actively modify the overall purchase order over here. And so you can actually see that individually. Although I would encourage doing the bulk update of case size or going product by product with the case size update.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. Okay.
Right.
And with that,
Cool
we're
live
at
demo.
time.
Yes. Why don't you go ahead and stop sharing your screen for a second?
Yeah.
I'll go back to sharing mine, and we'll round this out. So, like I said at the start, if you want to take a test drive of Happy Buyers with some live store data, actually start making some actions for yourself, and realizing some of these great results that Nick has been sharing with us, check us out. Happy Buyers free trial, 14 days. If you don't like us at the end, we can shake hands and walk away and say we're still friends. So yes, Nick, thank you so much for your time today, dude. We love being able to have buyers like you guys on to share this just like, you know, the day in, day out, like what is the nitty gritty of your life, your role, how you're doing it. And we know you're very busy, as you guys all are, wearing your 37 hats. So taking the time with us and our audience, very appreciated, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate the support over here.
Yeah. See you, Nick.
All right.
Have a good one.
Okay.